I invited my stepbrother to my wedding after not talking to him for years, but he embarrassed me with a speech no one asked for. My name's Owen, 28M, and my fiancée, Lila, 27F, and I have been planning our dream wedding in Hawaii for nearly a year now. It's supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, but there's this one big issue that's been bugging me, whether or not to invite my stepbrother Lucas, 30M. Lucas and I have never gotten along. He's the kind of guy who's been spoiled rotten his entire life. My dad married his mom when I was 12, and Lucas was 14. Even back then, it was clear that he could do no wrong in the eyes of his mom. She and my dad catered to his every whim, while I was expected to just go along with it. Over the years, Lucas turned into one of those entitled, spoiled brats who think the world owes them something just because he exists. Now Lila, being the sweetheart she is, thinks we should invite Lucas, hoping that maybe time has matured him out. She's all about second chances and family, but I'm hesitant. The guy made my life hell growing up. Inviting him to my wedding feels like inviting a tornado into a house of cards. My parents, though, are insisting that if Lucas isn't invited, they won't come either. They think it's petty to hold on to old grudges, but they weren't the ones who had to deal with him. I'm really struggling with this decision. I want my wedding day to be perfect, and the idea of Lucas ruining it makes my stomach turn. But at the same time, I don't want to cause a huge family rift. I feel stuck, and I don't know what to do. So to give you some context, my parents got divorced when I was 10. It was a messy, drawn-out battle that left me with a lot of scars. I ended up spending most of my time with my mom, while my dad went on to remarry pretty quickly. He married Lucas's mom when I was 12, and she wasted no time moving in with Lucas. I wasn't thrilled about the whole thing, but I tried to make the best of it. Lucas, on the other hand, made it clear from day one that he didn't like me. He was used to being the center of attention, and I was just an obstacle in his way. Stepmom was insistent that Lucas and I should be like real brothers, but it was obvious that wasn't going to happen. Lucas didn't want a brother, he wanted a punching bag. As the years went on, things only got worse. Lucas's bullying started off small, just mean comments and dirty looks, but as he got older, it escalated. He'd push me around, call me names, and spread rumors about me at school. And it wasn't just verbal abuse. There were accidents too, like the time he accidentally shoved me down the stairs and broke my arm. My dad would brush it off as boys being boys, and my stepmom would accuse me of being dramatic. My mom, who only had limited custody, tried to intervene, but there wasn't much she could do. One of the worst things Lucas ever did was destroy the one thing that meant the most to me, a model airplane my late grandfather had helped me build. I found it smashed to pieces in the garage one day after school. Lucas just stood there laughing, saying it was an accident. My dad and stepmom bought his story, and I was left picking up the pieces, both literally and figuratively. Through all of this, my complaints were largely ignored. My dad didn't want to hear it, and my stepmom always took Lucas's side. It was infuriating. I spent my teenage years feeling completely alone, like I didn't belong in my own family. High school was a nightmare, with Lucas spreading rumors that I was gay. Not that there's anything wrong with being gay, but the way he did it was purely malicious. He even sabotaged my friendships, telling lies that made people turn against me. The guy was relentless. The day I left for college was one of the happiest days of my life. It was like finally escaping a prison. I moved as far away as I could, limited contact with my family, and tried to start fresh. College was a breath of fresh air. I threw myself into my studies and ended up doing pretty well. I majored in business and landed a good job in sales after graduation. It was during my junior year that I met Lila. She was everything I could have hoped for in a partner, kind, understanding, and supportive. We hit it off right away, and it wasn't long before we started dating seriously. Lila was the first person I told about Lucas and everything he put me through. She was horrified but also compassionate, encouraging me to put the past behind me and move forward. After graduation, I moved in with Lila, and we started building our life together. Things were going great, and I was the happiest I'd ever been. So when I proposed to Lila last year, it felt like everything was finally falling into place. We started planning our dream wedding, and for a while, it was all smooth sailing. But then came the issue of the guest list and the dreaded question, should we invite Lucas? Lila knows everything about Lucas, but she also believes in giving people second chances. She suggested that maybe, just maybe, Lucas had changed. Maybe time had changed him, and he'd show up to the wedding as a decent human being. I wasn't so sure. I mean, people can change, but Lucas, I had my doubts. The wedding planning process has been mostly fun and exciting, but I was leaning heavily towards not inviting him. I mean, why should I? This is supposed to be one of the best days of my life, and the thought of Lucas being there just makes me anxious. But my parents, in the sense my dad and stepmom, started pushing hard for Lucas to be invited. They said it would be petty not to include him, and even went as far as to say that if Lucas isn't invited, they won't come either. Talk about emotional blackmail. Lila, ever the optimist, thinks I should give Lucas a chance. She argues that people change and maybe Lucas will surprise me, but I can't shake the feeling that inviting him would be a mistake. I don't want to spend my wedding day looking over my shoulder waiting for Lucas to pull some stunt. But at the same time, I don't want to create a massive family rift right before my wedding. It feels like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. After weeks of agonizing over it, I finally relented. I sent Lucas an invitation. I'm still not sure if it was the right decision, and honestly, it's been eating at me ever since. I know people can change, but Lucas, I'm not convinced. What if he shows up and ruins everything? So here I am, turning to you, Reddit, for advice. Did I make the right call by inviting Lucas, or did I just set myself up for disaster? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Update 1. First off, I just want to thank everyone for the overwhelming response to my original post. The advice and support you all gave me were incredible, and it really helped me feel less alone in this. I wish I could say I have good news, but unfortunately things didn't exactly go as planned. So, after much debate and sleepless nights, I decided to give Lucas a chance. I mean, it was my wedding and I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could behave like a decent human being for once. I know some of you warned me against it, but with Lila and my parents pushing for it, I thought I should at least try to keep the peace. Plus, I kept telling myself that maybe he had changed, or at the very least, maybe he wouldn't do anything too awful at such a big event. Lucas arrived in Hawaii a few days before the wedding, acting like we were the best of friends. He was all smiles and charm, which immediately made me suspicious. It felt so fake, like he was putting on a show. During the rehearsal dinner, Lucas was cracking jokes and making small talk with everyone, but I couldn't help noticing the occasional snide comment he'd throw in when he thought no one else was listening. It was like he couldn't resist the urge to get under my skin, even in small, subtle ways. The real kicker came when I overheard Lucas talking to a couple of my groomsmen after dinner. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help it when I heard my name. Lucas was bragging about how he used to torment me when we were kids, laughing about some of the stuff he pulled like it was the funniest thing in the world. Here I was, giving this guy a chance to be part of one of the most important days of my life, and he was making a joke out of my childhood trauma. I didn't confront him then. Maybe I should have, but I didn't want to cause a scene right before the wedding. Instead, I tried to brush it off, telling myself that it didn't matter. As long as he didn't cause any trouble during the actual wedding, I could get through it. The wedding ceremony itself was beautiful. We had a gorgeous beachside set up with the ocean in the background, and everything looked like amazing. Lila looked stunning as she walked down the aisle, and in that moment I tried to focus on her and forget about everything else. We exchanged our vows, and for a brief moment, I felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. But even during the ceremony, I noticed Lucas standing off to the side, smirking. It was subtle, and maybe no one else noticed, but I did. It was like he was just waiting for the right moment to strike. Then came the reception. Everything was going smoothly at first. The food was great, the music was perfect, and everyone seemed to be having a good time. Then, during the toasts, Lucas decided he wanted to make an impromptu speech. He wasn't even the best man, but he grabbed the mic before anyone could stop him. I should have known better. I should have stopped him. But I didn't want to make a scene, and that's when the nightmare began. Lucas's speech started off innocent enough, but it quickly turned into a roast of me. He started telling embarrassing childhood stories, some of which were true, but most were exaggerated or outright lies. He made fun of my appearance, my career, and even hinted that Lila was too good for me. The guests were awkwardly laughing, clearly uncomfortable, but Lucas just kept going. He was loving every second of it. The final blow came when Lucas casually said that he had slept with my high school girlfriend. He said it like it was nothing, like he was telling some funny joke, but the room went silent. Everyone who attended were extremely shocked and didn't know how to react. Lila's parents looked horrified, my friends were in disbelief, and I was just numb. I couldn't believe he'd actually done it, on my wedding day, no less. My dad, who had been all about keeping the peace, finally snapped. He stormed up to Lucas, grabbed him by the arm, and physically dragged him out of the reception, but the damage was done. The mood of the reception was completely ruined. People started making excuses to leave early, and those who stayed were just awkwardly trying to pretend everything was fine. Lila and I tried to salvage the evening, but it was clear that the whole vibe had shifted. I felt like I was in a daze, barely processing what had just happened. That night, after everyone had left and Lila and I were alone, I broke down. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and so incredibly stupid for ever thinking that Lucas could change. I kept replaying his speech in my head, wondering how I could have let this happen. How could I have been so naive? Lila was amazing through all of this. She held me, reassured me, and told me that none of it mattered because we were married now, and that's what was important. But I couldn't shake the feeling of humiliation. So here I am again, Reddit. I don't know how to move forward from this. I don't know what to do about my relationship with my family, especially my dad, who was the one who pushed so hard for Lucas to be invited in the first place. I feel like I've been betrayed by everyone who told me this was the right thing to do. What do I do now? How do I deal with this betrayal? And how do I move on from what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life turning into one of the most humiliating? Any advice on how to navigate this mess would be greatly appreciated. I'm honestly at a loss. Update 2. Hey everyone, I want to start by saying thank you for all the support and advice after the wedding disaster. I've read through every comment and message, and it's been overwhelming in the best way. After the wedding, my parents reached out, practically begging for forgiveness. They admitted that they'd been wrong about Lucas and that they should have listened to me. My dad, especially, seemed genuinely remorseful. He said that he had enabled Lucas's behavior for years, always downplaying it as boys being boys, but after what happened at the wedding, he finally saw Lucas for who he really is. My stepmom, on the other hand, was a bit more defensive, but even she couldn't deny that Lucas's actions were out of line. They offered to pay for a new reception, just for close family and friends, to make up for what happened. They said it was the least they could do after everything Lucas ruined. I could tell they felt guilty, but honestly, their offer felt more like an attempt to smooth things over than a genuine apology. A new reception wouldn't erase what Lucas did or how I felt. Meanwhile, Lucas, being Lucas, sent me a text the day after the wedding. It was a string of mocking messages, gloating about how he'd made the night memorable, and how I should thank him for giving everyone something to talk about. He even threw in some insults about how I was still the same loser I'd always been. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just blocked his number, but the damage was done. His words stung, and I felt even more humiliated than before. After much thought, and after reading through a lot of the advice you all gave me, I made a decision. I blocked Lucas on everything, his number, social media, you name it. He's out of my life for good. I can't keep letting him drag me down, and I refuse to give him any more power over me. But that decision also led me to reconsider my relationship with my parents. Their apologies, while appreciated, fell too little too late. They allowed Lucas to torment me for years, and only now, after the wedding disaster, are they admitting they were wrong. I'm torn between wanting to cut them off entirely and trying to find a way to rebuild a relationship with them. For now, I've decided to take a step back from my parents as well. I told them I needed some time to think and that I didn't want to see or talk to them for a while. They were upset, especially my dad, but they said they understood. I'm not sure how long this break will last, but I need space to process everything that's happened. Lila fully supports my decision to cut Lucas out and to distance myself from my parents, at least for now. She's been incredibly understanding, even though this whole situation has been hard on her too. It's not easy watching the person you love go through something like this, especially when it should have been a joyful time for us both. We've talked a lot about boundaries and how to protect our peace moving forward. Lila agrees that we should keep our distance from my family until we're both ready to deal with them again, if that time ever comes. We've even discussed the possibility of moving to a different state after the dust settles, just to start fresh without all the family drama hanging over our heads. So here I am again, asking for your advice. I've made the decision to cut Lucas out of my life permanently, but I'm still conflicted about what to do with my parents. They've apologized, but it feels like too little too late. Should I give them another chance, or is it better to just move on without them? Update 3. Hey everyone, I'm back with another update, and things have gotten pretty intense. After taking some time to think things through, I decided that I couldn't just let Lucas get away with what he did. I know revenge isn't always the answer, but after everything he's put me through, I felt like I needed to do something to finally stand up for myself. And honestly, I didn't want him to think he could just walk all over me without any consequences. So, here's what happened. I found out that Lucas had used his company's credit card to pay for his trip to Hawaii. I only discovered this because one of my friends from college works at the same company as Lucas, and they casually mentioned it while we were talking about the wedding. Apparently, Lucas had been bragging about how he got a free vacation on the company's dime, using some excuse about it being a business trip. My friend was shocked when they realized what Lucas had done, but they didn't want to get involved directly. That's when I got an idea. I anonymously reported Lucas's fraudulent expenses to his employer. I sent them detailed information, including the dates of the trip and the fact that it coincided perfectly with my wedding in Hawaii. I even threw in some of the more outrageous things Lucas had said about his free vacation, just to make sure they understood that this wasn't an innocent mistake. It didn't take long for things to blow up. A few days later, I heard through family members that Lucas had been called into a meeting with HR. They confronted him about the charges, and he tried to weasel his way out of it, but the evidence was too strong. Not only did they fire him on the spot, but they're also considering pressing charges for fraud. Lucas's life just went from smooth sailing to total disaster, and honestly, I don't feel bad about it. He had it coming. After the fallout from Lucas's firing, my parents reached out to me again. They were furious, of course. Somehow, they found out that I was behind the anonymous report. Maybe Lucas figured it out and told them I don't know. But they called me demanding to know why I would do something so vindictive. I didn't hold back. I told them that Lucas deserved every bit of it for what he did at my wedding, and for all the years of torment he put me through. I reminded them that they were the ones who pushed so hard for Lucas to be invited, and now they were reaping the consequences. I told them that Lucas was dead to me, and if they didn't respect my decision to cut him out of my life, they would lose me too. My dad tried to argue, saying that I was overreacting and that family is family no matter what, but I stood firm. I gave them an ultimatum. Either they respect my boundaries and cut Lucas out of their lives as well, or they could consider themselves cut off from me. My stepmom started crying, saying that I was tearing the family apart, but I wasn't backing down. They were initially resistant. They kept trying to convince me to let bygones be bygones. I made it clear that I wasn't going to budge. I told them that I had spent my entire life being pushed around by Lucas, and I wasn't going to let them guilt me into forgiving him just because it was convenient for them. So Reddit, I'm turning to you again. How do you think I went too far by reporting Lucas's fraud? Was the ultimatum to my parents too harsh? I'm feeling really conflicted right now, and I could use some guidance on how to navigate this situation. Any advice or insight you could offer would be greatly appreciated. Update 4. Hey everyone, I'm back with what I hope will be my final update. It's been tough these past few weeks, but I'm finally starting to see a way forward. I've made some decisions about my family and how I'm going to move on from this whole mess. Thank you all for sticking with me through this. It's been incredibly helpful to have a place to share my thoughts and get advice. After the ultimatum I gave my parents, there was a lot of tension. They didn't contact me for a few days, and honestly, I didn't reach out either. I was giving them space to process everything, and I needed some time myself to figure out what I'd do if they chose Lucas over me. It was a nerve-wracking few days, to say the least. Eventually, my dad called. He was more subdued than I'd ever heard him, and I could tell that this whole situation had really shaken him. He told me that after a lot of discussion, he and my stepmom had decided they were going to respect my wishes. They agreed to cut contact with Lucas, at least for the foreseeable future. My dad admitted that he couldn't fully cut his son out of his life, but he promised that he wouldn't force any kind of relationship between Lucas and me. He said he understood that Lucas had crossed too many lines, and that it was time to stop making excuses for his behavior. It wasn't the perfect resolution I had hoped for, but it was something. I appreciated that they were willing to respect my boundaries, even if it took a lot of pushing to get there. My dad also apologized again for not taking my side sooner, and for all the years of brushing off Lucas's behavior. It felt sincere, and while I'm not ready to forgive and forget just yet, it was a step in the right direction. With my parents agreeing to respect my boundaries, I've decided to start rebuilding my relationship with them. But slowly. I'm keeping them at arm's length for now, just to see if they really stick to their word. I need to protect myself and Lila from any more drama, especially as we start our married life together. Speaking of Leela, I couldn't ask for a better partner. We've talked a lot about the future, and we've decided to take a big step together. We're moving out of state. We found a great opportunity in a different city, far away from all the family drama, and we're excited to start fresh. It feels like the right move for us, a chance to build our life. As for Lucas, I haven't heard from him since the fallout from his job. I don't know what he's doing, and honestly, I don't care. He's out of my life for good, and I'm determined to keep it that way. If my parents want to maintain some form of contact with him, that's their choice, but I won't be involved. I've set that boundary firmly, and they've agreed to respect it. So this is where I'm at now. Lila and I are looking forward to our new life together in a new city with a fresh start. I've decided to keep my relationship with my parents on a trial basis. They've shown that they're willing to change, but I'm not going to let my guard down completely just yet. Time will tell if they can really respect my boundaries and put my needs ahead of their desire to keep the peace with Lucas. Thank you, Reddit, for being there through all of this. Your advice and support have been invaluable, and I don't think I could have navigated this mess without you. Lila and I are excited about the future, and for the first time in a long time, I'm feeling hopeful. Here's to new beginnings and leaving the past where it belongs.